They smile while stealing your reality. They praise you while planting doubt. You think you're free, but every move was predicted and used. These aren't random behaviors, they're precision tools. In the narcissist's hidden arsenal, what you're about to hear will change the way you see their eyes, their words, and their silence. Let's begin. Mind Game 1. Reality, fragmentation. They don't lie directly, not at first. They twist small details. They forget things you're sure they said. You start to doubt your memory. Then your sanity. You ask, did I misunderstand? You didn't. That creeping confusion is engineered. They break your internal compass so they can install their own. Control begins when certainty ends. If you're constantly second-guessing yourself, someone is guiding your thoughts, and it isn't you. Mind Game 2. The echo of absence. They disappear, not physically, emotionally. In moments you need comfort, they go quiet. When you're vulnerable, they become cold. But when you regain strength, they return, affectionate. The cycle is surgical. It trains your brain to chase their warmth like a drug. Their silence becomes punishment. Their affection becomes the prize. You mistake neglect for depth, but it's not love, it's reinforcement conditioning. Mind Game 3. Shame mirroring. They reflect your fears back at you, but darker. Insecurity about your worth, they'll joke about your failures. Doubts about your appearance, they'll mention someone better. These aren't accidents. They use your private fears as weapons to control your self-image. They quietly feed your self-loathing. If you begin to feel smaller in their presence, you're not shrinking, you're being compressed. Mind Game 4. Fabricated competition. You're always being compared, but never directly. A story about an ex who adored them, a co-worker who's so talented, a stranger who understands. These comparisons aren't compliments to others, they're subtle devaluations of you. It creates a phantom rival you can never beat. You compete to prove worth. But it's a game you were never meant to win. The real goal isn't admiration, it's exhaustion. Mind Game 5. Empathy baiting. They'll cry. For the first time, share a tragic story, reveal a broken part of themselves. In that moment, you lower your guard. You protect them, but later, when they hurt you, they'll remind you of that pain they once shared. You feel guilty confronting them. Their wound becomes their shield. It's not vulnerability, it's insulation from accountability. Mind Game 6. Reversal projection. They accuse you of what they're doing, cheating, lying, manipulating. The accusations feel so absurd you defend yourself emotionally, completely. But while you're justifying your integrity, they're diverting your gaze from their own actions. You begin to internalize the guilt. You wonder, am I the problem? It's not confusion, it's misdirection, disguised as concern. Mind Game 7. Slow isolation. It starts with mild remarks. She's jealous of you. He's always negative. They don't really get us. And slowly, you retreat. Friends fade, family feels distant, but you're not alone. You're with them. That's the point. You wake up one day, surrounded only by their voice, and that voice rewrites your world. Isolation doesn't always look like chains. Sometimes it sounds like love. Mind Game 8. Distorted rescue. They cause the storm, then hand you the umbrella. They insult you, then offer comfort. They humiliate you, then say, you know I love you. The person who wounds you becomes the one who heals you. That's the deadliest loop, because now even pain becomes attachment. You stay, not because you trust them, but because your nervous system has been trained to. Each of these mind games is quiet, elegant, and built erosion, not all at once, but over time, so slowly that you confuse collapse for coincidence. What makes narcissistic manipulation so devastating is its subtlety. You don't notice the bars until the cage becomes your home. You may think you're overreacting, that maybe you're too sensitive, but ask yourself this: why do you feel less safe around someone who claims to love you? That is your signal, because real love does not require confusion. It does not thrive on control. It doesn't play chess with your insecurities. If someone must shrink you to feel big, that's not a partner, that's a puppeteer. The truth is, you were never broken, just bent by someone who needed you off balance. But once you name the pattern, you take back the pen. You rewrite the story, one page at a time. Final insight: narcissists don't just manipulate your actions. They redesign your emotional architecture. But awareness is demolition. Every truth you reclaim is one brick removed from their fortress. Let's go deeper. There's a reason narcissists use these tactics silently. Overt abuse is easier to identify, easier to reject. But the slow erosion of identity, that's harder to trace. They don't break you with violence. They dissolve you with confusion. You don't fall apart. You vanish in pieces. You'll hear, "You're imagining things." But your instincts aren't imagination. They're memory in disguise. Here's a hidden layer. Narcissists study your emotional blueprint, not out of love, but out of need. They observe how you respond to praise, guilt, silence. Then, like a careful puppeteer, they pull strings with surgical timing, and you don't even feel the thread. Their kindness? It's not affection, it's calibration. They'll ask about your childhood, not to understand you, but to map where the wounds live, to know where to press when obedience is needed, to know what to echo when validation is useful. They collect your pain like currency, then spend it when control slips. And when you resist, the shift comes. They no longer seduce, they shame, they no longer charm. They mock, but you won't leave. Not yet, because now you're not just connected. You're invested. You've tried to prove your worth, defend your mind, explain your heart, and every time you were met with twisted reflections. That's not weakness, that's conditioning. Narcissists weaponize hope. It's their most exquisite tactic. They will hint at change. They'll say, "I'm working on myself." They might even start therapy. They'll cry, break down, say you're the only one who sees the real them. But watch closely. It's not transformation. It's a reset. The cycle is beginning again. This time, sharper, cleaner, more disguised. Here's a sign you may have missed. Their eyes never truly soften. Even in their apologies, there's a void. Because their remorse isn't for hurting you, it's for losing control over you. You're not healing their trauma, you're feeding their theater. Let's expose another game. Language inversion. They redefine words. Respect becomes obedience. Love becomes sacrifice. Boundaries become betrayal. Over time, you use their dictionary. You begin to believe that saying no means you don't care, that asking for peace means you're difficult, that protecting your truth makes you selfish. But listen carefully, your truth doesn't need their permission. Another tactic, crisis creation. They manufacture chaos only to manage it. A missed call becomes betrayal, a look becomes accusation, a silence becomes war. You spend energy putting out fires they secretly lit. And once you're drained, they offer comfort. Now, they're the savior again. That emotional turbulence, it's not a relationship, it's engineered dependence. Remember this, narcissists feed on your reaction. Silence wounds them more than rage. Indifference starves them more than confrontation. The less they can provoke, the less they can puppeteer. But what hurts most is how they make you betray yourself. You abandon your boundaries, you excuse red flags, you silence your gut. You abandon your boundaries, you excuse red flags, you silence your gut, not because you're blind, but because you're hoping this time is real, that this version of them will last, that the warmth isn't bait. You're not naive, you're loyal in a war you didn't start. But here's the secret they never want you to know. The moment you stop explaining, defending, reacting, their grip begins to slip, because their power was never in their presence. It was in your permission. You are not too broken to heal. You are not too sensitive, too emotional, too much. Those were distortions fed to you so you'd look inward instead of seeing outward. The truth? Your depth was never the issue. It was their inability to swim in it. And yet, even knowing all this, detaching can feel like dying. Because the mind doesn't cling to the pain, it clings to the illusion, the memory of early days, the golden mirage. That version of them, the one who made you feel seen, alive, electric, that person never existed. They mirrored your light. That's why it felt like magic. But mirrors don't love. They reflect. Then they distort. Let's pull one more curtain back. The phantom self. Narcissists don't truly exist as whole people. What you see is performance, a patchwork of borrowed traits, copied emotions, mimicked empathy. They become who they need to be to survive admiration, not connection, not intimacy, just worship. Their identity is a costume stitched from your preferences. That's why they shift. That's why you always feel like you're chasing the real them, because they don't have a real them. only roles, and when you try to love someone with no core, you get lost in the hollow. So how do you reclaim yourself? You stop explaining to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop justifying boundaries to those who view them as threats. You stop shrinking to fit into rooms built for your silence. And slowly, the fog begins to clear. You remember what peace feels like. Not excitement, not tension. Peace. That quiet knowing. That soft space where you don't have to perform. That space? It's yours to return to. You survived the storm not because you fought harder, but because something in you refused to disappear. That voice, that whisper that said, "This isn't love," that was your soul keeping you alive. So here's the final truth. Narcissists win only when you forget who you are. Remember, reclaim, rebuild. You were never theirs to shape. You are yours to restore. Now breathe. Let that truth settle like dust on broken glass. And when you rise, do so whole. Final insight. They rewrote your reflection, but your original script, your essence, is still intact. And the moment you stop giving them the pen, the healing begins. Subscribe for more truth-telling, mind decoding, and quiet psychological armor. Your recovery is sacred, your insight is power, and your mind is finally your own.